The CGA Tour, a podcast unlike any other. Now your host, Calvin Alexander.
Hey Cowboy fans, today's episode is brought to you by Oakley Verklo, your go-to independent insurance agent and proud OSU alum. Oakley helps with home, auto, life, and business insurance, working with multiple top-rated insurance companies to find you the right coverage at the right price. Licensed in Oklahoma and Arkansas. Call 918-280-9068 or email oakley.verklo@connectmyinsurance.com. Personal service, honest advice, and a fellow poke helping you protect what matters most.
Welcome back to the latest episode of the CGA Tour podcast. As always, here I'm your host, Calvin Glen Alexander, and on tonight's episode of the podcast, I'm joined again by Marshall Scott, the man who does it all for pistolsfiring.com and fellow podcaster now, the Reload podcast.
Yeah, I'd say amateur podcaster.
Well, I think, we're all amateurs at this point, though. But
it's like the Talladega Nights whenever Ricky Bobby's dad comes in. He's a semi-professional race car driver and an amateur tattoo artist. I think, I think that describes my life somewhat well.
I like that a lot. That's pretty good. Well, of course, thanks so much for joining. Want to go over the last game against University of Tennessee at Martin and preview Oregon's game here. One, I just got to ask, how much are we beating Oregon by? I mean, what is the bare expectation Oklahoma State fans should have here for this matchup?
Yeah, it's obviously looking tough. Not only is it Oregon just in general, this 5 years ago would have been a crazy tough game for Oklahoma State to walk into, much less everything that happened last year, the roster turnover. Then on top of that, starting quarterback Hosseini goes down instantly onto the Zane train. I'm still high on Zane. I think everybody was really excited about Zane, and then they saw what Haas could do, so everybody was super excited about Haas. Then obviously he gets hurt, and now everybody's sort of down in the dumps. But flip the calendar back 12 months, and everybody's really excited about Zane. So I'm excited to see what that's like. I'm not expecting Oklahoma State to win this football game. I'm just hoping to see some competitive, plays, downs, series, and just sort of getting a better idea of what Oklahoma State is coming back from Eugene.
Yeah, do you think my hypothesis is that Zane would have played a little bit better, or at least what we've seen out of Zane would have been a little bit more eye-catching, a little bit more eye-popping, not a sprint for a touchdown like Haas did, where he makes the defender just bite and then he goes around him. But we just would have seen more plays tailored to Zane if he had been starting the whole time, or if the game script hadn't gone off track, because all of a sudden he's thrust into playing out of nowhere. I mean, and I don't want to say out of nowhere. He probably was going to play, but Gundy never said, hey, first half this guy, second half this guy, whatever. All things considered, it might have been, hey, whole first game is Hosseini. We want to see what he can do, have, kind of some time at the helm and see what he looks like, because he hasn't thrown a pass in college football until last Thursday. So I'm speculating here. Any sense in that at all?
Yeah, I think just generally Zane's style of play is not going to be as exciting as Haas's style of play, but just because Haas is so much mobile with his feet, that doesn't mean he can't be as effective. And I think you're right in saying that some of maybe the offense was maybe more tailored to a running quarterback than, and not that Zane can't run, he can wiggle a little bit. But I think that was maybe more in the game plan of like, okay, here's what we're trying to do offensively. That obviously changes a bit now. I think, I'm not expecting the offense to look better against Oregon because they're playing Oregon. But I think if you're, replaying Tennessee Martin this weekend, with Zane getting all these first team reps and with maybe the game plan being styled around him a little bit more, I think that goes more smoothly. And on top of that, this was, Zane's first time taking a snap in a live game since I believe it was like November 21st, 2022. It's a state championship game his senior year of high school. So I think just in general, there's going to be a little bit of growing pains there. But then, I think the game plan was more tailored for Haas. But on top of all that, Zane's style of play is just not going to be as exciting as Haas's. But there's not a ton of quarterbacks that can move like that. So I expect Zane to sort of significantly get better as these weeks go on. With that being said, you take what you can from the Oregon game and sort of see what's next.
Yeah, why do you think that the spread keeps moving higher up? I mean, Gundy's historically been pretty darn good in situations like this, where he's at least covered the spread, made it a close game. I mean, I think you and I both remember that Florida State game against Jameis Winston, right? Like, we were a touchdown away from winning that game, kind of still late in it, and that's a top 10 matchup that we're playing against. Any ideas of why maybe the spread is just going up and why all of a sudden now it's Oregon by more points? Is it really a quarterback deal?
That's a good question. I wonder, it's probably a quarterback deal. That's probably where that is leaning, but just the general spread in general. And, I think, we think back to, the 2014 days and sort of around that time, but here lately, you think back to the UCF game a couple of years ago, that didn't go very well. Some trips to Manhattan and facing Kansas State didn't go very well. So I think, if you're Vegas, you're saying, okay, this Oklahoma State team is going to Oregon and, that's supposed to go any better. So I'm not a sports gambler. I don't bet games, but I'd imagine, the line is moving based off of A, the quarterback, and then sort of B, how Oklahoma State's performed on the road, I guess, as of late.
Yeah, probably a ton of sense in that. I want to ask you, of course, here about Wendell Gregory. Any other news, any ideas if he'll be suspended or anything like that?
No, yeah, so it sounds like he's going to be on the trip. Gundy said yesterday on Monday that, the plan is to just continue moving us forward. The incident happened. He allegedly stole 200 something bucks worth from Walmart. That took place in May. He was just booked this past weekend. So that's a little odd, but you'd think that, Oklahoma State has been aware of the situation. So I'd imagine that was something that was maybe more so dealt with over the summer. Gundy mentioned before the first game that, these teams or that his team has had maybe a little bit more discipline issues throughout than he's been used to just because of all this turnover and these, he's trying to fit these guys into the culture. So I wonder if that was something that he was sort of, referencing a little bit. But yeah, I think that this was all handled in the summer and then it's sort of going to be business as usual. Obviously, it's a little alarming seeing a mugshot out there on a Saturday, but I think this is all already been handled and knows to sort of moving forward.
Yeah, I did like Carson's tweet from Pistols Firing podcast. Is there any worse way to be a 1-0 team? Yeah, I mean, just like starting quarterback goes down, injured foot, whole deal. I got to say, watching the game, it seemed like, oh, this is Zane's turn. We're going to see Haas again maybe a little bit later, but Zane's got a chance right now. What did you take away from kind of both the quarterback play here from Thursday?
Yeah, I thought Zane looked really electric, or not Zane. Zane looked fine. I thought that Haas looked really electric. That first pass that he completed, he's running to his left, flips his hips back the other way, and then puts it right on Terrell Davis. I thought that that's like, hey, that's exactly what everybody's looking for. His touchdown run I thought was really impressive because it not only did he beat the defense at the edge, he beat the defense at the edge on the short side of the field. Like he had to get out there pretty quick. And then I thought that Zane did fine. We mentioned his first game since 2022. I think he completed 65% of his passes, didn't have a pick. I think he took one sack that maybe he shouldn't have taken, but I think for a first game for a guy, I think that was solid. Would you have liked more scoring drives? Absolutely. I think some of that's coming down to the offensive line and maybe not creating a running game for him. I think that's a tough spot for any freshman quarterback to be like, hey, also you don't have much of a running game that you can lean on. So I think that's maybe more so something that needs to get fixed. But yeah, I thought that Zane was perfectly fine. That ball that he threw to Terrell Davis, I think it was like 41-yard play, but the pass itself was like 50-something yards. Throws it from the right hash all the way to the left sideline, put it only where Davis could catch it. So I thought that was super impressive. I think that was the best throw of the game, regardless of which quarterback was playing. So I think there was a lot of positives. Obviously, it didn't look as sexy as what Haas was doing, but I think there's positive steps to be taken, especially not to knock too heavily on Alan Bowman, but I think this is maybe a little bit more promising. No matter which guy would have taken this than what Oklahoma State had last year.
Yeah, interesting that Bowman didn't try to come back for the 8th year. Just to kind of be a quarterback's coach, or maybe he just kind of knew. But he did go play for the UFL, so he's still a good quarterback. But want to ask you about that running game though. So Caleb Hicks seems like the starter right now, or maybe it's Rodney Fields, but he was out for the game. Any more info on that?
Yeah. Dave Hunziker said pregame that he thinks that Rodney was supposed to be the starter. Obviously, he was held out. Dave says precautionary, more so that that he probably could have played this game. I think Dave even said he expected him to suit up, but just not play, and he didn't suit up. So yeah, I think I'd like to see it with Rodney Fields. Just but it seemed like Caleb Hicks was the guy that they were leaning on. I think he had 21 carries. I think Sessi was second with 9. So that's a pretty stark advantage in Caleb Hicks' favor, and it was really tough to really know what that was going to look like, just because they listed 5 guys with an or. So there's still a little bit of question marks there because Rodney hadn't played in a game. Trent Hallen didn't get a carry, which I was a little bit surprised about. His yards per carry were pretty good last year. So yeah, I think I'm still, and it was tough to really say anything about the running backs just because there wasn't a whole lot of space for them to operate. So while I think learned a little bit in that, okay, it looks like Caleb Hicks is maybe going to get, a decent amount of carries, but adding Rodney Fields into that, I thought Sezzy maybe looked the best of the bunch in what he was able to do. So yeah, I think there was little bits to be learned throughout the running back room, but with limited offensive line success, and then not having Rodney Fields who might actually be the starter, not taking any big takeaways from that game quite yet, but looks like Caleb Hicks is going to be a pretty big part of the offense.
What do you make of Gundy bringing in 2 transfer tight ends that are highly rated guys, and also Josh Ford not really doing anything but starting, of course, being the starting tight end for the team? Yeah,
I'd hope that those guys get involved a little bit more moving forward. I don't think Josh had a pass thrown his way. I think that's something that Oklahoma State, obviously, a trend that Oklahoma State wants to buck. I think some of the tight ends are maybe more so being used as like H-backs, fullbacks types, and then Ford's maybe more of an inline type guy. So yeah, they added a lot. I think they're carrying maybe 2 or 3 more tight ends on the roster this year than they did last year, which would lead you to believe that, hey, they plan on using these guys a little bit. We didn't see that a ton in the first game. Gundy also mentioned you need to get Christian Fitzpatrick, the Marshall receiver, the ball more. So I think there's going to be ebbs and flows, especially as this offense is sort of coming together with all these new pieces. So I'm not ready to put a fork in the tight end for this season quite yet. But it is a little, you sort of wonder just based on how little OSU has used the tight end over the years.
Yeah, and I mean the passing aid, very interesting that Oklahoma State had. I mean, Caleb Hicks kind of rushing, but under 200 total yards of offense, I believe. At the end of the day, I mean, that's kind of the main thing here. I'm looking. It's actually it's 359, but between Zane and Hicks, there you have under 200 yards total from your starters. And kind of passing and rushing game. The wide receiver seems like Davis got open quite often, but also was hand fighting a little bit, and some deeper passes that I think if 1 or 2 had just gone Zane's way / Davis's way, it would have been incredible. From the quarterbacks, any particular, from the wide receivers, any particular one that you kind of go, hey, maybe that guy's the one the next game they were saving for, or anything else to be said about it?
Yeah, I think it's a really balanced group. That's what I think I like about it. I think Fitzpatrick, I think he's listed at like 6'4", 220, which is, your big ball catcher. Davis is, a deep threat. Would have liked to, seen 1 or 2 of those connect a little bit better, but it felt like they were right there on some of those. Gavin Freeman, I thought, got a lot of work. I think he had 6 targets, which was tied with Davis for the most. Obviously, he scores the touchdown. He's a guy that you just get the ball in space to, and I think Sam Jackson is going to, sort of live in a similar role to Freeman. So I think it's a really balanced group in that, you've got your deep threat in Davis, you've got your contested catch guy in Fitzpatrick, and then you've got these slot guys who you're trying to get the ball to in space. And I think I'm interested to see more Sam Jackson, but so far what I've seen from Gavin Freeman, I think he can be a real weapon for this offense.
Gotcha. And then preseason wise, at least defensive MVPs, there were 3 of you guys picked one. One you picked was Jaleel Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
Any big takeaways here from game 1?
No big takeaways from Jaleel Johnson. I picked him just because I knew nothing about anybody really on the team. And then Iman Oates at Big 12 Days told me, that Jaleel Johnson is going to be a real problem this year. So I was like, all right, that's who I'll take just because I know so much less. No, I thought the defense played really well, though. I thought, a couple of horse collars, which are sort of super weird thing, but that sort of provided, that got UT Martin around midfield. But I thought Oklahoma State's defense did a really good job of whenever they got in those scenarios, battling back and bending and not breaking. You obviously give the touchdown up on the double pass. I think, if you give a touchdown up on a double pass, you sort of shrug your shoulders and say, okay. So, I was super impressed with the defense. Obviously not the competition that Oklahoma State's going to be facing throughout the year, but, you had Brian McCoy, I think, made 14 tackles. I think Brandon Rawls maybe had, or 7? No, he had 14, I think. And then Brandon Rawls had 13 or 12 or something like that. So to have 2 really high tackle linebackers. Wendell Gregory makes 3 sacks. Thought the pass rush just in general was better than it had been in previous years. And I think some of, Gregory's sacks were on 4-man rushes. So I think, obviously competition is what it is, but I think that's a bright spot for Oklahoma State. The defensive backs, I didn't notice a ton, which I think is probably pretty good. I think that group is really deep, and I didn't have any big takeaways of, hey, they keep getting burnt. So, overall, especially considering what everybody watched all of last year, I think this defense is, consistently better, pretty a lot better than what it was last year, which is somewhat not saying a lot just from how bad that defense was last year.
Yeah, I kind of forget that this wasn't all just Alan Bowman and Ollie Gordon and Brennan Presley and some of the other guys that were household names just not performing well. This was really a defensive deal. I mean, Texas Tech at one point, it's 49-42, and then there's also, of course, the Colorado game that I'm scratching my head at how we didn't score a point. But then again, we let up 50 points, and let's the wrong word, but it just gave up 50. I'm not sure. Just pivoting a little bit here, wanted to ask you about the Dan Lanning, Mike Gundy. I think we all agree as Oklahoma State fans, this was nothing, but Oregon fans definitely didn't take it that way. Yeah. Most of Lanning's press conference was about Gundy, as you wrote an article earlier this morning. Can you give us more insight onto why maybe Oregon fans are thinking this is a shot at Lanning or Oregon?
Yeah, so Gundy said during his news conference on Monday, Gundy said something along the lines of, at first he praised the team, really well coached. Players are really good. They're spending a lot of money. So that was his first discussion of money. Then on his radio show, him and Dave got maybe into the financial side of college football a little bit more. Wasn't speaking too specifically all the time on Oregon. Did crack a joke that, Oregon's going to have to pay a lot of money to keep that quarterback around. But I don't know. It's true that Oregon is spending a lot of money, which I don't know that Oregon and Dan Lanning were necessarily fighting against, but it's just sort of like a, multiple things can be right. Is Oregon spending a lot of money? Yes. Is it legal? Yes. Is that good for the future of college football? Sort of Gundy was alluding to, probably not. To me, it was a big nothing burger. Maybe it's Oregon, there's not a ton of adversity maybe that Oregon is going to go into this week with. So if this is something that they need to put on the bulletin board, then maybe that's sort of where all that is coming from. I thought it was all just sort of super weird, and I was like, why is Twitter sort of blowing up about this? But yeah, I didn't think it was that big a deal.
I will say the most interesting thing of my interactions with Oregon fans is that they all think they're just going to blow out. It's not going to be close. You can be hopeful, but it's just not even going to be a possibility that you guys are in this game. I mean, there's no chance. And I would just like to say, I think Gundy can at least cover the spread. He historically has done pretty good about that. What chances do you think we have against Oregon this Saturday?
I don't think Oklahoma State's going to win. I think that covering the spread is a possibility. I think, which is not say, I think they can hang around 3 touchdowns or so.
Yeah. It's now up to 4 at 28.5 points. I mean, what are we doing?
Yeah. And at the same time, like we said, I was at that UCF game. So I was at the Kansas State game whenever it was 48-0 or something. So I know that, this team as of late has been capable of a big blowout, but I don't really know what to make of the spread, but I wouldn't be surprised. I guess what I'm saying is if Oklahoma State, played it within a 10, 17 point game, and maybe I also wouldn't be surprised if Oregon did just sort of run away in coverage. They're so, I didn't learn a ton about Oklahoma State playing UT Martin. I don't feel like, especially considering that they've now changed quarterbacks. So I don't think anything will surprise me. The spread is a big number. Oklahoma State's been beaten big before, but they've also, Tyler wrote something on our site today that was just sort of some of the bigger spreads that, OSU's been underdogs. And I think in all of those, they've covered for the most part. So, And like I said, I don't gamble that much, but I could see it going either way. Just maybe not either way as in Oklahoma State winning the game, but I think I could see them hanging around, or I could see Oregon sort of boat racing. Yeah,
I got to say, Oregon faced an FCS team. We faced an FCS team who allowed 13 points, who allowed 7. That's the only thing I said. Both were home games. Both were in about 55,000 seat stadiums. Both are the loudest stadium in their conference, respectively. Seems kind of crazy to me that Oklahoma State wouldn't be at least able to hang around, but also 40 transfers. the UCF game, the K-State game last year are great examples of, all right, well, this team can definitely just kind of fold when it gets tough, but also this is not the same team.
Yeah,
so
entirely different.
I'm really excited to see this Saturday and just kind of optimistic at this point. Why not be?
Yeah.
From Gundy's most recent press conferences and stuff, do you think he's changing it all in his coaching philosophy or any taking any big changes kind of mentally? I mean, it's brand new coaching staff this year. just kind of want to ask, really, like, what do you think Gundy's doing differently this year, maybe get different results than last year?
Yeah, I don't know that maybe a ton has changed with him. I think I think he's maybe been refreshed a little bit with all the new coaching stuff. Like he said something, he got asked yesterday about linebackers and sort of like the style of linebacker that this new group is recruiting. And he was like, yeah, but to be fair, I'm not sure if, the old staff, he didn't say the old staff, but, I'm not sure that we used to didn't go after these guys, just not get them. But whereas like these guys are getting them. So I think that sort of just brings a little bit of refreshed attitude. I think he's leaned into, the portal and all that stuff. This is really the first time that Oklahoma State's been big portal players. So I think that some of that will probably be refreshing just to have all this change happening around you. I bet it's also makes you want to tear your hair out at certain times. We mentioned, discipline issues throughout the summer and things like that. So, I don't think that, philosophy wise or maybe even like day to day wise, a lot has changed for him, but his surroundings have obviously changed quite a bit.
And what were your takeaways from other Big 12 games kind of this week? And you and I were talking briefly before starting recording. It's nice when it's a Thursday game because then you get to sit around Saturday and Sunday and go, all right, college football slate's open, not worried about my game anymore. What were takeaways you had from this past weekend?
TCU obviously looked outstanding yesterday, kicking the crap out of Bill Belichick. Maybe that Bill Belichick team isn't any good whatsoever. Maybe that's just like was what it was for TCU, but they looked pretty dang good. That was it Friday night where Baylor was playing Auburn, and then there was another Big 12 game going on. Is an ACC team.
Was it West Virginia?
No, I don't know, but both of those teams lost, so that was a little disheartening for the Big 12. But then obviously coming back getting that big win against UNC, I thought was really good. Kansas State's got some question marks surrounding it. All of a sudden, you go and lose in Ireland. Close game with Iowa State, and I think that was like the perfect game for Iowa State. Was rainy day in Ireland, wet field. Just find a way to win. So, but then to come back and struggle against either North or South Dakota for which of the Dakotas they were playing was certainly head scratching. I think everybody thinks Kansas State's going to compete for the Big 12 title, but hasn't started out that way. So I think outside of that, pretty good weekend for the conference. Take away those two Friday losses to bookend it with the display TCU put on. I think overall, Big 12 will take that for sure.
Yeah, and the Friday night's game was Georgia Tech, Colorado, which
that was it.
7-point loss there by Colorado at home is a tough one, but it just looked like Colorado's learning. They've got a new quarterback as well, right? Yeah,
they've got a new quarterback, and I think that he just won the battle. They brought in a 5-star freshman. They went with the transfer. I forget where he came from, but So I don't know. Everybody's, especially in modern college football, everybody's learning so much about their teams in this first week. While I might have some data points of what could be, I don't know that I'm counting anybody out quite yet. We just saw a couple of years ago, 2023, whenever OSU starts horribly, loses to South Alabama 33-7 on their home field, and then comes back and wins 10 games and makes the Big 12 title game. So I think I'm going to give a little bit of grace for these first couple of weeks, but I think overall it's pretty good weekend.
Yeah, I mean, 2022, TCU goes to the national championship game. I don't think anyone preseason thought they'd do anything. Nope. They ended up having a quarterback also drafted in the 7th round, so wasn't a player on their team just came out of nowhere and Cam Newton to their team. Yeah. And it just seems crazy. The other things I got questions about with Oklahoma State is is there any kind of other updates here in other teams and other sports? I know this is the peak football season. We're in week 2. We've got Oregon, then a bye week, then Tulsa at home. But kind of basketball, baseball, anything like that going on as well?
Soccer's season got started. A little bit of a shaky start. They went to Norman and lost. I think they've won 2. I think they played 3 games, or they played 4 games. I think they're either 2-2 or 3-1. But maybe looked a little bit shaky to start. Wrestling is still rolling. David Taylor still in on the top recruit for the 2027 class. His name is Melvin Miller. He's from Pennsylvania. He released a top 6 earlier this week. Oklahoma State's still very much involved there. More wrestling. Wyatt Hendrickson's going to the World Championships in September. I think it's 15th and 16th, but maybe don't quote me on that. It might be 13th and 14th. So I don't know. I feel like there's a lot happening around the wrestling program, at all times, pretty much right now, and that's a attribute of the David Taylor effect. trying to think of outside of that. I haven't heard a ton more. Basketball is going to get rolling. I think the team is going to be pretty good. I think they put some out. Shot tracker. They've got basically like sensors in their balls and around the practice gym. They put up more shots this offseason than any other team in the country that uses a shot tracker. So that's certainly a positive. You hope these guys can hopefully hit a couple more shots than last year's team. So I'm looking forward to that, but haven't necessarily heard a ton of basketball news of late. I think they released a non-conference schedule. Going to be playing 2 exhibitions, one in Alabama, Birmingham, and then the other playing SMU, I think, in Dallas.
And they played Chicago at some point in Chicago. That's a regular season game now. Yeah. That counts, right?
Yeah, I think Northwestern they play in Chicago. So I think it's sort of a fun non-conference schedule. Most of it is home, aside from a couple of neutral site games. That Northwestern game will act as a neutral site game, but it's Northwestern in Chicago. So, but yeah, I think overall, I'm always looking forward to basketball season, even when they're terrible. It's sort of a flaw that I have. So I've clung on to the hope that the team can maybe be the one that gets OSU back in the tournament.
Yeah, no, I'm hopeful as well. I want to ask you about this weekend's game though against Oregon. What situation do you see as being like a great, hey, this is the way Oklahoma State wins? I don't think we blow them out, but like what situation where you go, hey, I feel like I'm most confident in this one aspect of the team so far has played really well?
Yeah, you got to win the turnover battle. I think that is list number one on pretty much any upset that gets brought up, which means both forcing turnovers and limiting them on your side. So you need Zane to take care of the ball. You need those running backs to squeeze the ball. And then, a pick six, a defensive touchdown would be beautiful. Maybe, Grantham Stone for scheming up blitzes and stuff like that. Maybe you get a strip sack and something happens there. So I think that's sort of the first part of it. I imagine that Zane is not going to go into Oregon making his first start and win the game all with his arm. So they need to have found answers for the running game issues that they had against UT Martin. Can you figure that out in 1 week while traveling to Oregon? That's a tall task. But yeah, you need to control the game on the ground a little bit. That way you control the clock a little bit. You need to stop Oregon from running. And then I think you can create a couple turnovers and who knows what happens. But yeah, I think that's the path. Is it narrow? Yes, it's very narrow, but it's college football. Things get a little weird sometimes. So maybe.
What do you think Gundy's telling? I mean, I know you wrote an article about this. It's kind of what I'm asking. What do you think Gundy's telling Zane right now of how to play, what to do?
Yeah, he just said that Zane needs to go do what he's done his whole life, which is go play quarterback. And that's he hadn't got to do that much these last few years. So there's a little bit of that. He mentioned that he needs to play free, play aggressive, not look over his shoulder, which probably helps whenever over your shoulder at this point is 2 true freshmen and maybe a receiver in Sam Jackson. I think that should all be good. Zane, we've gotten to talk to him a limited number of times. He seems like, and his teammates have sort of corroborated this, a laid back guy. So, if you wonder about the emotions of going into, Autzen Stadium and playing your first, college start, I don't know that that's going to get to him as much as it might, a normal freshman quarterback, just because he seems very go with the flow type. So, I think, he just needs to go in and make his reads and play a football game. It just so happens there's going to be, 60,000 screaming Oregon fans sitting around him.
Yeah. Any ideas on the uniform matchup though? With that being said, Oregon fans, want to get out there, wear all the green, yellow, black, pink, maybe blue sometimes. Not even sure. I know what their first colors are. It's not been fun year. They're also a Nike school, but any uniform matchup prediction. Yeah. They're not just yes. They're not a Jordan school though, interestingly enough.
Yeah, I don't. I wonder if Oklahoma State, just because maybe you anticipate Oregon going a little crazy, I wonder if they try and maybe look a little classic, maybe go like orange, white, orange. I'm trying to think what I would like to see. I think maybe what I'd like to see is orange, white, orange. Going to maybe a cursive cowboy lid. I think that would sort of, I think that's like a safe bet to, no matter what Oregon does, you as Oklahoma State look good. So, I hope they somewhat play it safe in that, let's not get crazy. Let's let Oregon take care of that. And I think Oklahoma State will come out looking good.
I wouldn't mind a chrome helmet though. Again, wouldn't mind coming back with a chrome helmet.
Yeah. I mentioned on one of our podcasts, whenever we were previewing, cause it was Thursday's game was themed as Throwback Thursday. So I was like, there's gotta be something in the uniform. I mentioned the Flaming brand, which was popular when we were like little kids.
Yeah.
It's an ugly ugly logo. I will give it that, but it would have been fun for one game to put up there. So, a chrome lid would be fun. You know, do you think of the James Castleman where it's, you know, floating off into the sky? I think that would be a lot of fun. Maybe wishful thinking though. I think if they were going to do something super crazy like that, it'd probably be in front of their home fans. But I don't know.
Yeah, senior day or something like that. Yeah, I mean, it's got to be. I'm curious to see what Oregon does, because there's so many times where they play on national televised games and they wear crazy uniforms. And this one being on a CBS game, and the Big 12's new deal with CBS, TNT, all of those, very interesting to me. Did you have any takeaways from, you know, kind of just for us to college football here? I mean, UNC, I want to say they're picked to finish 8th in the ACC. I didn't know that till last night, but it also makes the expectations a little bit different in my head than what they were going into the game. But yeah, I mean, Florida State, you know, and LSU both win this weekend, beat Alabama and Clemson respectively.
Yeah, I thought the Florida State Alabama game was big just because Alabama didn't, and it's not even that Alabama lost the game, it's that they didn't really look good. They didn't, you know, the keys of Alabama have always been, you know, like discipline and yada with Nick Saban, and they just didn't seem to play very hard, which was a little shocking. You know, I think that was a huge win for LSU. You know, Clemson, I feel like LSU and Clemson are in this sort of the same spot right now where they seemingly just can't win that big game. So putting them against each other, you know, one of these teams has got to win. So for it to be LSU, I think that's pretty big for them. Grant Nussmeier is obviously, you know, going to be in Heisman contention, all that stuff. So I thought that was super impressive. Trying to think if there's any maybe lesser games that I'm thinking about now. Not really, but yeah, as you know, no matter where UNC was picked, I was surprised that, you know, a Bill Belichick defense against college kids was able to give up as many points as they did. Obviously, it didn't help whenever, you know, you're giving the ball to TCU and they're scoring directly off of that. But yeah, I think what was shocking about that was just sort of how disorganized certain things seemed, because that was, you know, similar to the Saban-led Alabama teams. That's sort of what Bill Belichick teams hang their hat on. So yeah, that was gnarly. You know, it's his first year, so maybe can't expect too much. But yeah, I was surprised that it was that ugly. I think I expected TCU to win the game going into it, but for you know, Kirk Herbstreit's dog to be calling, you know, the final 2 minutes or whatever, that's not what I expected.
Yeah, getting the headset on, that was a bit wild. I also want to ask you about the Utah UCLA game. Not sure if you had much to tune about that. I don't think Oklahoma State is too much of a comparison Utah overall, but when you talk about football teams, head coach has been there for a long time, kind of really sticking in their roots, but also history of winning 10 plus games a season and not really losing, you know, or at least having winning seasons multiple years after, you know, going on. Both bring in new offensive coordinators. Granted, Kyle Whittingham kept the defensive coordinator at Utah, but he's also coach in waiting, so there's a little bit different aspects there. Utah looks pretty good against what I think is going to be an okay UCLA team from everything I know, because that's family's UCLA fans and UCLA alums, so I follow them a little more than any other team in the nation, really. But also with Nico Amaliava, like that was pretty rough. Yeah,
rough first game. Obviously, Tennessee fans are going to enjoy what happened there. But yeah, I think the Utah angle of it, you know, bringing in the new offensive coordinator, bringing in Devin Dampier, who was with him at New Mexico. I can't remember his New Mexico State, if I'm honest. But, you know, a lot has been said about OU sort of, you know, bringing over Arbuckle and Mateer, you know, an OC quarterback combo from a different team. That's what Utah did the same thing. Obviously had a ton of success with it. Oklahoma State sort of did the same thing where, you know, Meacham was at TCU, Haas was at TCU. Obviously the backup quarterback, not the starter, but so maybe that's just something that like is more commonplace moving forward, where it's sort of a packaged OC quarterback combo from those smaller schools. But yeah, they look super good. They look like a team that, you know, can just like find ways to win football games with Dampier's ability to move. So yeah, I think Utah came out of the weekend maybe looking like the best of the Big 12 teams. You know, I guess TCU maybe has something to say about that from last night's performance. But yeah, it seems like a big bounce back from what was a disappointing game or disappointing season for Utah last year.
Yeah, I could definitely see Hosseini sitting around over the winter maybe last year and going, man, you know what? I don't think I'm starting here over Josh Hoover. And then last night's game kind of put the nail on the head here. He's probably one, he may be better overall, may have a better college career, who knows? Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, probably thought, hey, if I've got a chance to start in Stillwater versus no chance to start here over Hoover and TCU and Fort Worth, I definitely get transferred.
Yeah, I think Hoover was among quarterbacks returning to college football this year, like second in passing yards from last season. So yeah, I think it's probably, some Big 12 bias that maybe not a lot of people are talking about, what Hoover and TCU have done. But yeah, that offense has been potent for a little while now. So yeah, didn't necessarily shock me that it's a good offense and that Hoover's good at quarterback. I think maybe more so shocking that a Bill Belichick defense would allow such things.
Yeah, 48 points from Bill Belichick defense. Even with 70 transfers, you'd figure that would be a good thing versus you'd figure you're looking to get more transfers, not less.
Yeah.
In the door as your Bill Belichick and bring it in. I guess kind of one of the last questions I may have for you is, normally speaking, if I'm following any other college team and I'm going, okay, yeah, they bring in a new offensive coordinator and he came over with the guy, as you referenced OU, now Utah, it'd be going, oh yeah, this is Haas's team for sure if you're Oklahoma State. But there was a lot of Oklahoma State faithful, including myself here, who was like, hey, I've heard all of this about Zane year over year over year. What are some of the things we've heard about Zane that maybe you can remind us of a little bit as a fan base? Go, hey, he was profiled as like the guy, and he still, of course, could be because he's played what, maybe 3/4 of one game so far. It's not like I think he could be phenomenal and great. Maybe it was going to be the house out. Maybe it was 51-49 at the end of the day, right?
Yeah. So I think, I think that maybe the biggest tell was entering last season, and Gundy doesn't, go out on limbs for unproven guys very often, but it was the OSU media day back in August of last year. Whenever he said that Zane was ready now, he just didn't have any experience. Obviously at that time, OSU was just coming off a Big 12 title game appearance. Alan Bowman's returning, so it made sense that Alan Bowman would be the guy going in. But for Gundy to go, out on a limb and say that about a guy that, hadn't taken a college snap, saying he's ready, I think that is maybe something to point to, of like, hey, this kid's probably pretty good. And then just sort of throughout his tenure, you just hear, stuff from people at practice, like, hey, the Zane kid's, he sort of got it rolling. So, getting hurt last year, not practicing a ton, probably didn't help that stock. And then, the hype that is Haas Haney and how he's, one of, if not the fastest players on the team. I think that just sort of got wrapped up really quick, and everybody was excited for it. Everybody had a right to be excited for it after what we saw. But I think maybe the fan base should just go back to their tweets from a year ago and be like, hey, this Zane guy might actually be pretty good. So yeah, I'm still I think aboard the Zane train. Will it work out? Who knows? He's played 3/4 of football against UT Martin, but I think it's something to note that people have been talking about him in a positive light for some time now.
And any more to add here about Ronnie Fields Jr.? I know he's added to the freshman watch list for running backs, and he still maintains his freshman availability because last year he didn't use all of them. We had Ollie. And what we could maybe expect out of Ronnie Fields, barring, of course, any setbacks here from the injuries coming back from.
Yeah, I think he's it's probably just because he's also Oklahoman, but he's giving me sort of Justice Hill vibes. Justice was a guy who came in and started playing and started, making highlight plays as a freshman. So, that BYU game last year, I think was Ronnie Fields' debut for him to get a couple of, breakout carries. I think he had a big 4th down conversion, scores against Texas Tech. So yeah, I think everybody's pretty excited about him. I don't know that he can have that Justice Hill level impact this year just because of how filled that room is. And, you've got Caleb Hicks, you've got Sissy Falahi looking good. Freddie Brock, who's ran for 1,000 yards over the last couple of years. So, I think that room is deep enough to sort of allow him to grow. But, likewise, you've heard a lot of good things about Ronnie Fields since he got on campus. So I think that whenever he finally sort of gets his opportunity, hopefully the line blocks for him. I think that could be, a big positive for Oklahoma State. And something I mentioned earlier that, Sissy Falahi sort of looked like the best running back from Thursday. I wonder how much of that is because of his ability to go east and west. You got a little bit more wiggle to him than a Caleb Hicks and a Trent Howland, maybe more so like barreling into guys. So that maybe that style of play, which I think Rodney also possesses, is better for this offensive line that might be struggling. Obviously, the offensive line, it's this new collection of people that just played together in their first game for one time. So maybe it does, exponentially get better from here. But if that is something you're worried about, maybe that little bit of wiggle that Sessi and Ronnie Fields have can be beneficial for Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I got to say, someone who's a Chargers fan, and then knowing we lost one of our tackles, and now the whole offensive line's been reconfigured before playing the Chiefs, seeing Oklahoma State's offensive line make a bunch of different adjustments and having to go through a bunch of different guys now starting and losing a bunch of the starts from last year makes me a little nervous for Friday night. Chargers Chiefs for sure.
Yeah, the Oklahoma State line, it was interesting because the Orr situation was at center between Kason Carpenter, Austin Kwecky. Carpenter goes down injured, which means Kwecky moves. Kwecky, they both started the game. Kwecky started at right guard, where Noah McKinney was supposed to start based on the depth chart. So Carpenter goes down. Kwecky goes to center. Noah McKinney, who had been switching in some series at right guard and right tackle, then goes to right guard. So that sort of establishes that. It sounds like Kason Carpenter is going to be available, if not this week, soon. But I think if you're Oklahoma State, there's 6 guys for 5 spots. You're sort of trying to figure that out. Maybe a little bit of not that an injury is a good thing, but maybe that'll allow 5 guys to sort of just work together solemnly for a little bit, and then sort of see where you're going. I think this offensive line has the capabilities of sort of scaling up. It's just more a matter of like how much is possible in a 4-month span here. Yeah, no,
it's very well put. Any score prediction you want to give, or who wins by, or maybe not even necessarily who wins, but what the score is? At the end of the day,
yeah.
I mean,
I think Oregon's going to win.
No, that's fair enough. Yeah, they're only favored by 4.5.
Yeah,
it's all good.
Yeah, I think Oregon's going to win. I haven't thought too deep. I think Oklahoma State will cover. I think maybe like a 14 to 17 point gap somewhere in there. Oregon probably scores 42-ish points, so maybe like 42-28, somewhere in there. Yeah, that doesn't feel good, but it'd have been more points than you scored against UC Martin, I guess, for what it's worth. But it doesn't feel good. But like I said, this is such a and like Gundy sort of pointed out, the differences in these rosters are a little vast. So I don't know. I'm not going in with the expectation that Oklahoma State has to win this game, especially considering the 9 losses in a row that we all witnessed last season. But if they could just show a little competitiveness throughout, if they can look better in some of the things they're doing than they did last week, then I think I'd take that as a win, even though I don't know that many people in the locker room or what have you would take that as a win.
Yeah, I think it's either one or two things. I think it's either like a 35-56 type of game where Oregon just puts it on early and Oklahoma State's able to make it where it's covering at the end. Or it's one of those where it's 42-21, where it's, hey, we tuned in, saw some highlight plays here and there from Oklahoma State, but at the end of the day, it was 3 scores to Oregon 6. It just didn't, but it's still covered. That's the one thing I'm making clear here. I just hard for me to imagine that two top 5 teams, or Power 4 teams, what I want to say, would not be able to compete closer than that. But like you said, the roster talent, the roster depth, it would be an historic upset.
Mm-hmm.
That's the easiest way to put it. I'm not trying to be pessimistic at all. In fact, just trying to be as optimistic as I can be. But I don't pick us going away. If I had $100 and someone said you got to bet it on a game, I would not bet it on this one. Yeah. My heart would not be in the Oklahoma State bet for sure.
Yeah, and then this Oregon team is a little bit more put together. Like there's more returning spot than all the stuff that Oklahoma State's going through. So like not only all of that, but now Oklahoma State in its second game where this team is actually together is going to Eugene. It's a tough spot to be in, I guess.
Yeah, they've got a quarterback who started basically a whole season now. Great enough for Oregon, but they still have a quarterback who has. And one of the Oregon writers I had on a few weeks back from AutzenStadium.com, and he mentioned how much respect Oregon fans that are taking this game seriously and are thinking, hey, listen, it's a Big 12 team. This isn't some group of 5. This isn't some weird, basically out of nowhere team or anything like that. This isn't SMU who just got promoted to Power 4 either. Coming in here, they've got time respect for Gundy. So they're the right people are also not trying to say, oh, this is a 50-point blowout or anything like that, which makes me feel good about Oklahoma State overall. And maybe at the end of the week I won't. So we'll see.
Yeah. We that's the fun part. We will see. We'll certainly see.
We will see. Well, Marshall, thanks so much for joining here on the latest episode of the CGA Tour podcast. Calvin Glen Alexander Tour, and we'll catch you guys again soon.
Hey, Cowboy fans. Today's episode is brought to you by Oakley Burklow, your go-to independent insurance agent and proud OSU alum. Oakley helps with home, auto, life, and business insurance. working with multiple top-rated insurance companies to find you the right coverage at the right price. Licensed in Oklahoma and Arkansas. Call 918-280-9068 or email oakley.burklow@connectmyinsurance.com. Personal service, honest advice, and a fellow Poke